Let's begin with a few minutes of practice. First, just turning your mind to refuge and bodhicitta for a moment. Bringing yourself back to practice. Then we'll sit for a few minutes, following the same instruction as this morning. Not for very long, but alternate with a few breaths and then just resting the mind on exactly what arises, the moment-to-moment unfolding of experience. Now, from the space of this practice, imagine on your crown and the crown of all sentient beings, the lotus and moon seat, the Ri, radiating light, gathering the blessings of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, alleviating the confusion and suffering of beings. Chenrezig appears in the crown of our heads. Radiating light, the one face, forearms, sitting cross-legged, the moon behind. Ornamented with all the jewels, the silks, holding the wish-fulfilling gem at the heart, crystal mala in the right, the lotus in the left. Amitabha, Buddha, his guru, seated on his head. The essence of the blessing and energy of all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas is present. And for those who know the Tibetan, you can sing along. For those who don't, just offer the praises. So Melinda can lead us in the praises 3 times. Jingi maga kuda kaza tsanye ki onajin tuje chenji drolazi chenrezi la jaselo jowo jingi maga Sanje ki ulajen tuje chenji drolazi chenrezi la chaksalo jo kinyi maga gudo kazo sanje ki Tuje chenye nolazi chenrezi la jasalo. Offering praise in this way, opening our hearts, Chenrezig radiates a blaze of light. We become Chenrezig. And we'll recite the mantra briefly. Environment and beings dissolve into light, into the Chenrezig, our crown, our root guru, inseparable from the Buddha, dissolves into light, dissolves into us. Dissolve from the top down and the bottom up into the Shri at the heart. Shri dissolves, rest. Arising in essence is Chenrezig. Dedicate. In Tibetan. You can just follow Melinda if you don't want to bother reading. Oops. We're on to the dedication. That was page 31.
33.
We want 33.
33.
So. So now we have time for questions and discussion. Robin.
I'm wondering if, like, at home, my practice can be as long as we've been doing these little short things.
Yes.
You know, it can? Like, I
Yes.
can just do the root text and...
Just the root text, yeah.
Sweet. Okay. I've been wondering. 'Cause I'm like, I don't know if I want to dedicate a whole hour right now. I have to go someplace in a half hour, so...
Yeah. Well, we just did a complete practice there in 15 minutes, and we could have actually been a little bit more. So it's actually good to do it more often than to do it irregularly. Just like exercise. Probably not to save up all your running and do it once at the end of the year in a marathon. Probably better to walk around the block a couple of times a day. Be better off. So, yeah, no, it's actually much better. And it's good to actually do a lot of our practice in brief sessions, so that we actually can develop enough of a habit and enough of mental get a resilience with it and pattern with it. And then when we do sit down and we do the marathon version, it's not like just trying to slog through or just kind of get it done. We can actually, it becomes more fluid. Then we might find one of our longer sessions just saying, I could do a few more 100 mantras here, no problem. As opposed, oh my goodness, I have to do another 1,000, otherwise it doesn't count. So, yeah.
All right, thank you.
That's actually one of the reasons that I like to do just the root text on first Sundays, because you can really see what the practice is. You can say, oh no, actually I can do that. I can get from beginning to end here, and you can have some sense of the practice. It doesn't feel rushed.
So, on that note, so on Wednesday, would it be improper to suggest that we do that now and then? You know, take more time to do the visualization, and then space it so we have time to actually visualize, and then just do the root text. Would that be an okay thing to suggest, or is that breaking tradition?
Oh my word. Everything was fine until you said that thing about breaking tradition, and then it's like, oh no. Everything breaks some kind of tradition, so that's usually not the final arbiter on whether or not it's worth doing or not doing. Sometimes it is, but no, it's good to do it differently, and we do things, and sometimes somebody is capable and comfortable and can lead us in the Guru Rinpoche prayer, like Melinda's done several times. Other times, I think it's worth doing different ways. Sometimes we do the Mahamudra lineage prayer, sometimes not. So I think it's good to have a range.
Oh, it's still on. I have been most days doing Chenrezig practice, sort of. I say sort of because I'm not sure it's really the complete practice. Here, I'll hold this closer to my face since I'm getting looks. So I usually do it in the car, where I do a brief, actually the visualization takes longer than I could, but it's a brief visualization, and I do the, what I call the Joe prayer, and do 108 or so O Mani Padme Hum mantras. And then at the end of that, I say something to the effect of, do some sort of brief dedication, but I don't do the kind of dissolving. I'm wondering if that's a bit of a fault. While you're driving, it's not a good idea to try to dissolve, I don't think. So, yeah. So if I can get some clarity on, maybe I should be doing this somewhere, in some other way, or what would you recommend? Thank you.
Well, the dissolution is kind of is an important piece. Though without the dissolution, I wouldn't say it's complete. I couldn't say it's complete without that, the creation and completion piece of it. But it is certainly not without its efficacy to do that. Certainly, there are definitely there are all kinds of. I'm thinking of the different. I don't know if I want to even mention that there are 4 levels of Tantra, but there are, and the level that actually includes the creation and completion is more complete, you could say. But the other ones that really revolve more around more working directly just with appearances, the way we ordinarily work with them, working with purification in a very ordinary sense, some of these things, working with developing compassion and devotion in a more, in that sense. So those are all efficacious. But in terms of this practice, I wouldn't say to do the practice without the dissolution is complete. As far as doing it while driving, I could also make a case that becoming sort of deeply involved in the identification as Chenrezig, in the pride of the deity, the cars turn into Chenrezig's chariots and whatnot. You might lose track. So losing track when you're driving is not recommended. I don't think it's said anywhere in the Tantra that thou shalt drive while distracted. So it's fine to recite manis just kind of as a general thing. That's fine, but taking some time when we have more of what I call the laboratory arrangement, the kind of the clean room of no cars, the amusement park car, no bumper car things going on. It's good to do it when you don't have that, and then you can settle into it and relax a little bit more with it. Could be fun to go to the amusement park where actually you wouldn't have to worry about it and really completely discuss. Oh, might have been. You can try that out. You try that out and give us a report on that.
A blessing.
Yes.
If I may say so, one last thing. What I like about doing it in the car is it's an immediate reminder. What I like about doing it in the car is it's an immediate reminder that if I'm like ticked off at somebody who just cut me off or something, I'm like, oh, wait,
Yes.
hold on. Anyway, thanks.
Absolutely. I wasn't making a case that it was entirely bad, or that it was bad to do. I said it was efficacious. It's just not the same as doing it as a formal practice. But you point out a very clear example of how to carry the practice, and when when we have something like a mantra and some sense of the meaning and the connection of it and some sense of the view, that it is actually, it transforms our situation.
I realize this has been a question for a long time, but I hadn't looked at it. The dissolution. When you said, not complete without that, and so my mind was jumping to, well, why? And the first thing that occurred was it could be being carried away with the pride of the deity, as if I had enough to more than try that on occasionally, as if I had enough wisdom and realization to do that continually, 24/7. But that was just a first thing. But I would love to hear more response about why the dissolution piece is important.
There are several parts to that, but the main one is that for us to have a reminder of how appearances arise, we actually have to see the dynamic play and have to see them, that they're not this thingness that's kind of, it's stuck there. It's not like, well, the cup lid is always going to be there. That they're dynamic. The dynamic to actually be able to witness the dynamic play of the mind, and that it doesn't depend on an appearance. Not dependent upon appearance, not contained by appearance. So just being able to witness that, and to witness that over and over again, because that's actually what's going on over and over again, moment to moment. We ascribe a certain kind of coarse continuity to things, which is really revolves around not sweating the details. It's close enough, it'll get the job done. But it's not a really clear relationship with how appearances arise and dissolve on an ongoing basis. So it's important from that side. There's another context that I can see is important as well. If we really think about the practice as a practice for the cycle of death and birth, and then we arise at the beginning, kind of, and in that space, it's actually in some commentaries there's a fair amount of stuff happens right in the space. We say, well, I did the refuge, and now I'm going to visualize. In the between I did the refuge and the word now, there's a whole piece in there. And in that piece is in that we don't actually really dissolve the visualization with the refuge, but just in the letting it go. Then in that moment, there can be a recognition of basically the space of the mind, that potential for this. And then in that, embodied in that recognition, how much to go into this? We'll just cut out a little bit of it. Within that, there is kind of the intrinsic character of compassion is intrinsic to that space. You could say the space freed from all confusion, freed from all self-agenda, is kind of a naturally compassionate potential. Out of that arises the seed syllable as the tangible manifestation of bodhicitta. So basically out of the space of the mind, which is, you could say, the recognition of it has a natural compassionate aspect to it. we don't see it that way because we're going, what? If it's not this, I don't know what it is. We think, well, if it's not everything I'm believing in, I have no idea. So how could that possibly be compassion? But actually training ourselves to address the space, that space of the mind, as something that is not just an absence, not merely an absence of things going on, but the potential of it and the compassionate aspect of it. And out of that arises the seed syllable. Out of the seed syllable arises Chenrezig. And then in reverse at the end, the dissolution. And then the next practice, the next arising. So there is a kind of a bracketing of that defines the pattern of birth and death, and birth and death.
So the arising and dissolution could be labeled a method of mind training to be able to see that we're constantly doing that. That's how we play with appearances. That's how we work with appearances. I think that's what I was hearing you say, that it's a mind training. But not one of the aphorisms, but...
Yeah. We become accustomed to this pattern, and we become accustomed to the notion of arising solely for the benefit of beings, solely as a compassionate expression.
Where I got lost a little bit, not lost, but questioning, is when you mentioned the pause and seeing that's the basis of compassion. Mm-hmm. And I guess the creation and dissolution I think of as a practice like this, but that pause of the ground of compassion is constant whenever we let ourselves see it. I guess I don't think of that as particular to this practice, although it's an instance of it. But that's where my question came from, that's not particular to a creation dissolution, but it's just giving ourselves the pause to recognize, and it's one of the entryways to recognize.
Could say. Yeah, it's kind of like that. But this is kind of, we're sort of upping the ante a little bit in terms of this notion of death. Like, we can think of this pause that I'm otherwise kind of over here enjoying this pause. It's kind of like one of my favorite things to laugh about is the pictures of the escalation of the Big Bang from this infinitesimal micro singularity with no dimension, and in 1 bazillionth of a second it's 200 billion times bigger, and then it's this and this and this and this, and it's all as though you're sitting in a deck chair someplace in this space that doesn't exist yet to witness this thing. So there is a way in which while we're hanging out, this just pushes this into this space of, no, actually this is beyond the notion of me secretly being able to witness my enlightenment while otherwise remaining entirely intact. That was one of the lines from Trungpa Rinpoche. Says, yes, we all want to witness our enlightenment. And so we could do that. Good luck. But Dora, do you have some way to clarify this? It becomes tricky to introduce a lot of new language. So, but this is there. You can look in Daring Steps in the third section in Daring Steps, and you look up try to find the section on the 3 samadhis. 3 samadhis, and that will go into it more. And you can find that other places too.
Well, I don't know that this will clarify anything. I was thinking about the idea of calling this a kind of mind training, which I guess maybe we could, but just to make sure there is a distinction of how this kind of practice works. I think it's meant to be very experiential and not conceptual. So imagining our bodies, literally our bodies in the form of Chenrezig, literally dissolving. You know, it's not the kind of mind training where you think about it and contemplate, oh, all things dissolve. It's really working with the experience and not necessarily even, you know, the words. If we never had the words put to it, it should still work in a certain way. So, yeah, so it maybe it's different than a lot of mind training.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, it might be a little bit problematic to switch over and use that language, even though it's kind of, as a practical matter, you could say, oh, everything we do in practice trains the mind. But I think it's worth that. And what Dora reminds us of, really, if you think about the way that I said, Rinko Tuku speaks of the pride of the deity is really there. You're not there. You're not being Chenrezig. There is just Chenrezig. And then when you do the dissolution, that's the whole. Everything is embodied in that. Everything is absorbed into you, and then so being able to ride that, as opposed to I am going to watch the Hui dissolve now. For a while, it will feel very much like that. But the more that we can actually really relax into ourselves as Chenrezig, the more we can relax with that, and the more that we actually develop the clarity of the visualization, the imagination. The more those two come together, where that really then it changes. It gradually becomes a kind of an easier thing to do. But all along the way, all the steps are good. It's all good.
Thank you.
You may have already answered this earlier, but did I hear you pronounce what I have learned to be a hree as a tree? Tree or something like that?
If I did, I won't acknowledge it. How is hree? Have somebody who actually knows something about Sanskrit pronunciation. Hree is hree. How would you pronounce hree? Hree? Okay. One of the things that Rinko Tuku talks about, it's for some people kind of the notion of learning funny characters and shapes is kind of that's just one more thing, and that's the bridge too far. I'm just not going there. And after spending all this time doing learning these characters myself, I feel a little bit like, whoa, hey, wait a minute now. But Rinko Tuku talks about this. He says, yeah, maybe there's something in the shapes of the characters. And I was thinking, he says, this is like an artistic expression. And I was thinking, well, we're so big on abstract art in this culture. Why should we not just really sort of embrace these shapes as sort of this art, this aesthetic expression, and now we can learn these things and do them, and it's like I think there's I've found it valuable over the years to actually be able to train my mind and train my hand to make the different characters, and then they do. The characters themselves, you can parse them out, like just the om. Rigutuko talks about you have an ah, o, and aspect, and the basic character is the ah, and then it has the naro above for the o and the little dot for the He says you have the three kayas in the om. So. If you just have O and M, it's, I think, functionally speaking, you could say the same thing, but you don't have the graphic support of those elements. And I always found it kind of fun to do. I could see sitting down just writing O M O M O M. It's not quite as much fun as
So there's a point in the practice where you visualize the Hri radiating light, and the instruction is to visualize it extending to the realms of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, and they receive that and radiate blessings back to the Hri. How do you visualize that? In the realm, wherever the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas are, could one use the refuge tree for that visualization, or is there something else? And is the receiving of the blessings from that realm, is that simply experiential, or is there a way to think about what that means?
I think it does require some contemplative relationship with it, just to the extent just recalling whatever our sense of appreciation is for the qualities of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Without that, it's not very alive. But that's something to kind of, to the extent that we have an ongoing contemplation of the Dharma, an ongoing contemplation of these things, and a sense of relationship with it, then that's what we tap into at that time. So at that point, it is just an experiential thing. It's not sitting down to enumerate lists of qualities. In terms of the actual visualization of the Buddha realms, I don't know of any specific descriptions that have been said. Now, at this point, visualize the Buddha realms in this way. So I've never particularly invested in the question of how to sort out exactly what they might look like. It's more just like, it's just a sense of it. But there may be some descriptions. Dora, do you have some?
No. But on the first point, one detail that is sometimes added would be that the blessings are blessing our body, speech, and mind. So there's there's a thing about the body of the Buddha, the speech of the Buddha, the mind of the Buddha, and that we're receiving all of that, then all of our gates of activity are being purified, and that's how we can be Chenrezig ourselves. So there is that little piece that adds something. But I also have not heard of a specific way to visualize where the Buddhas are that are giving the blessings. It's kind of good in a way to have something that is not described in a certain way, so we can just use our imagination how we want to with that. But they always, when they talk about Buddhas, they often use words like countless, and so there's a lot of them.
And even the Gelugpas who describe everything and write many, many, many more commentaries and books don't have that particular description. There's long descriptions about the qualities of a Buddha, 100 this and 1,000 that, but not like in that moment to picture some kind of realm. Yeah, I just do light lots, much as I can conjure, try to get that experience. Yeah.
I'm reminded, Dora and Zopa were talking, I'm reminded of a story that Lama Namgyal told of being there when somebody was asking a question of Boka Rinpoche about some very particular practice. Lots and lots of different deities and lots of details. And there were some of the ancillary yidams that were in the visualization. They were just said, so and so standing over here, and it might have even said holding something in the left hand, and this person said, what are they holding in their right hand? And Lama Namgyal said, Boka Rinpoche said, oh, well, when you actually see the deity, you'll know.
Yeah, let me know.
So it's kind of some of these things we can sort of get ahead of ourselves, and sort of wanting to. There are a lot of details, and becoming clearer and clearer over time in the details is part of the practice. But there is a certain point where the clarity kind of arises from the inside out, not something that we bring. And I think this may be kind of like that. Mary.
Thank you. So I'm guessing this isn't unique, but it's something that I've thought about off and on, and I wondered what the procedure is when this happens, because it happens with some frequency. So you'll be chanting along, Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme. And suddenly you realize you're thinking about lunch. Instead of the deity, or instead of the practice. Like I try to get back on the train. But is there a better way of going about that without starting over?
Oh, well. No, you don't start over. Actually, I've forgotten This is something I heard fairly early on. From the point of view of the Vajrayana, since we are intrinsically Chenrezig, that's we're actually seeing who we really are as opposed to making up something. Whatever is going on, whatever environment, is actually the Pure Land. Thought and memory are waves of great intrinsic awareness. So you actually just pick up at that spot as though the practice had been done perfectly. It's like there isn't, it's kind of like you emerged like you already had got it right. There's no residue whatsoever. So that's one answer. Sometimes it feels like I've really dropped the whole carton of eggs. And I can't quite get myself to just go from there. Then I do something else to kind of compose myself and start get something going again.
This part is more of a part of a comment that it reminded me of in classical music when you're a performer, especially if you're performing like live. If you mess up, you just don't stop and you pretend like nothing happened, and it could be like clank, and you're just like, okay, no, it's fine. That's a part of the piece, whatever.
That's what Mozart, he put it there.
Yeah, obviously.
Yeah.
Another part is like how much of this, like I know that there's a lot of crossover between like sutras and stuff like that, but some of the visualization as well as like the focus on emptiness in this practice particularly reminds me a lot of the heart chakra or the heart sutra.
Heart sutra. Yep.
And I'm wondering how much of a connection there is.
Mm-hmm. I'm not sure exactly how to answer that. Well, certainly the teachings and the perspective of the Heart Sutra are kind of very much. That's all very much present as kind of that's really kind of, if you want to look, if you could say if you could paint a backdrop for certain kinds of things, you could certainly, one really good one would be the Heart Sutra as a way of the challenging questions, the challenging statements that are in the Heart Sutra are all apropos, they're all applicable in Chenrezig practice. Chenrezig, of course, shows up in the Heart Sutra. Yeah.
He's the main dude, right?
Yeah, Chenrezig's he's reciting it, so there's some kind of real connection there. And the Buddha just says, yeah, like he said.
Yeah, that's what he says at the end.
Yeah, at the end.
Like he said.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's gone to the other shore. All right.
Yeah.
I think, fairly obviously form is empty, emptiness is form, and the whole practice of deity is it appears, it disappears, the letter appears, the letter dissolves, So it seems to me, the way I connect those, it feels like experiencing parts of the Heart Sutra, which eventually, the Heart Sutra is describing everything, not just sadhanas and not just tantric practice. So, yeah. It's a good question, though. It's interesting.
It's great.
Do you have any observations, Dora?
I just think it's the same thing. The essence of what's being described in the Heart Sutra, or described or put out or expressed, is what we're working with in this kind of practice. And that's, part of the whole point is since we're creating something in our imagination, it makes it easier for us to see that it's not substantial and that it can be created and it can be dissolved. But we're meant to be learning that as a step towards getting that about all this stuff that seems so much more real than Chenrezig. So it's a method to take us to that, to realization of the Heart Sutra, I would say.
Yeah. We're creating this, and then we're creating that imagination. And we could say, this is the imagination. And one thing Lama Michael said while we were in one-year retreat that kind of seems to apply is, we go into long retreat and do these intensely so that this is going to sound funny, but like the world of Chenrezig seems more real than this. So we're creating both. Mind creates all. So you just keep practicing this, and it helps chisel away at how we make this all so solid. And then we're just suffering constantly from that mistaken solidity. Yeah, so this all loosens it. Yeah.
I know that there's an Amitabha practice, and I think at a recent weekend there's going to be one offered down at the Eugene Sangha. And I'm just wondering if in our lineage we ever do an abbreviated form or include any Amitabha practice as part of the Chenrezig practice at all, if there's, some practices that we do.
Well, the Dewa Chen prayer, you could say, is an extremely abbreviated Amitabha practice, because the Amitabha is the main, is the central figure within the Dewa Chen prayer. Yeah. So that's a very abbreviated Amitabha practice. It may have been so abbreviated that you didn't notice it was an Amitabha practice. It doesn't do too much more than, here's Amitabha, and on the right and the left is Vajrapani, Chenrezig. It's the other way around, but
There's a song that's sometimes done at Chenrezig night that was used at the Amitabha last week.
In here?
That would be the Dewa.
Oh, that's what he said.
yeah, that's it.
The Dewa Chen.
Yeah. Dewa Chen prayer. Lama Sangsing does a lot more with Amitabha than we have. He came up once back in the 90s, early 90s, and we did a couple of days of Amitabha practice with him. Haven't done that since Michael's been here. But, yes, the question of what else we could add, the list is actually so long that we tend to say, oh no, we couldn't add anything, just because there are so many possibilities. But in a way, I do miss the kind of the added dimensions and variations on the themes that come when we add more practices. But it also there are challenges with that. That was one of the things in the most of the later years when Lama Tinley was here. We did over a 2-week period, but basically in a week we did nine different practices. You had to actually have alternate Tuesdays for 2 different things. That was Chenrezig, and on one Saturday morning there was Chenrezig, and the next Saturday morning it would be Tara. It would go back and forth like that. And there were, what's that? Oh, Mundro. Sorry, that's what I meant. Of course, you knew what I meant, but nobody else did. And there were a couple of other things that were alternated, but basically 9 practices in a week. So that's obviously more than 1 a day on some days. And it was difficult for people to do all of them. Virtually impossible. And it was very easy. The difficulty was mirrored by the ease with which people felt defeated by not being able to do all of them. So people felt like they weren't really official, real practitioners unless they were doing them all. So it felt so that's one of the challenges in setting the schedule is not putting so many things on that it's people start to feel a little defeated by not being able. They really want to do everything, and then it's not possible, and that doesn't feel good. But that's one of the virtues of Bukar Rinpoche's Mahamudra program. He said, "Here's a set. This is a set of practices, and if you do these, you can feel confident that you're doing a complete set. If you'd like to do more, you can always add a cherry on top of the dessert, but the dessert's fine without the cherry. Doesn't actually not required. It's not required. So that's I think as long as people have a sense that they have a complete set of practices, and then they can add to kind of give a sense of enrichment. I think that's very nice. That's really nice.
Well, I felt that I did take the empowerment, for Amitabha, and I went down for the teaching, but it was very long. It was a long practice, and but I felt it did make me feel good, much better about doing Chenrezig, of going to the Amitabha practice. It made me feel a lot more centered in the practice. But, as far as doing a long Amitabha practice, I guess that's not something that I'm really interested in doing. That's why I asked about, the abbreviated form. But could you tell me more about the Dewa Chen practice, that as far as the other deities, are those the lineage people and the refuge tree?
No, it's actually very simple.
Okay.
That's what page 43. And we have the wonderful Buddha of limitless light. which is Amitabha, or in the Tibetan, Sangye Nangwa Taye. So there's Amitabha in front of us. To his right, Lord of Great Compassion, that's Chenrezig. It's a two-armed standing form of Chenrezig. To his left, Bodhisattva of Great Power. And this is Vajrapani, also a two-armed form. Blue, Chenrezig's white, standing skirt. Vajrapani's blue. They're both peaceful form. It's not a wrathful form of Vajrapani. And as I recall, they're both holding lotuses in one hand. And I've forgotten the gesture in the other hand. I'd have to look it up. I have to remind myself. Dora, do you remember? No.
I think Vajrapani's got it. Does he have a dorje?
Not the last time I looked. There are no doubt variations on this and the specifics, but basically standing white bodhisattva, two-arm form, standing bodhisattva blue, two-arm form on either side.
Could you point out the what line the Vajrapani?
Bodhisattva of Great Power. It's the first page. It's all in the yeah.
Okay.
Surrounded by an infinite retinue of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. And when Juditha finds out what all the pure realms look like, added up all in one place, then she can just tell us, and we can. Yeah. So then we see this as the Pure Land of Dewa Chen. And then it's just a simple aspiration prayer. As soon as this life has passed away, without diversion of other births, may I be born there, or may the person who has passed away, if you're reciting the prayer for somebody, may I be born there and thus behold the face of Amitabha. Basically, may I see Buddha face to face, recognize Buddha nature. All Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the 10 directions, please grant your blessing that the wish expressed in this prayer may be accomplished without hindrance. So that's about as concise an Amitabha practice as I could imagine. It's called the condensed Dewa Chen prayer. Monlam Dopani doesn't translate that exactly, but Dewa Chen is an interesting contemplation. We can be very we can create a very specific kind of sense of an environment. But no matter what we do, it always should have at its heart the sense that this environment is the environment that would be conducive for recognizing Buddha nature, for realization. That's kind of the ripening potential. So whatever that is, all appearances would naturally arise in such a way that we would recognize pure nature of appearance. So that's one of the ways that when we can say that we see this realm as Dewa Chen. It's not that we are supposed to imagine pink palm trees kind of sprinkled around I'm just confessing that for some reason, my vision of Dewa Chen has pink palm trees in it. I don't know where they came from. That's what happened. I look.
It's all wrong. Dewa Chen has something like that.
No pink palm trees. Okay.
We'll make it
I don't want to
Mine are
lead you. Green.
and with golden things falling from them.
Oh,
golden
that's
notes
nice.
of Dharma. So
Ooh, it's
see,
beautiful.
so we can all get really solid
Yeah.
about everything.
Except that it's not. But the notion that this environment, that all our experience could actually be have that quality of being the basis for or triggering realization. Any aspect of our experience could be the basis for triggering realization. So then we can kind of wind all the way back to the shamatha instruction that Michael, the way he introduced it last week, which he introduced it using different words. So he's actually done basically done the same practice several times, but this notion of just recognizing experience as it unfolds moment to moment, just recognizing it as experience. That is a ground for then, as we can, as the relaxation and clarity naturally kind of rises within that, then insight into the nature of experience unfolding also will arise kind of naturally. But it depends on that kind of the balance of clarity and relaxation. So there we can kind of look at Dewa Chen from two sides. So maybe let's go back for a few moments and just rest. But let's get out the Dewa Chen prayer. Not the Dewa Chen. Aspiration for Mahamudra. Let's get those out so that after we sit, we can do that.
Be in the red.
They've moved?
I think they're. We don't know. We cleaned up.
This is a good moment to stand up and stretch. This is our unofficial stretch break.
It's around here somewhere.
The Easter Bunny has been here. Did the Easter Bunny hide the prayers?
Fine, resting place. We all know it. You want to use them over. Don't go over.
Tut, tut, tut. No.
He's going to go over about 5 ago.
All right. So let's just take a very brief moment to come back. Just watching experience unfold, whatever that experience happens to be. Including the full range of experience of body, speech, and mind, internal, external. Resting, clear, and relaxed. That can lead us in our aspirations.
Namo Guru, Gurus and Yidams, deities of the mandala, Buddhas of the 3 times and 10 directions, and your children, consider me with kindness. Grant your blessing that all my wishes be realized. Sprung from the snow mountain of the pure actions and intentions, mine and those of all sentient beings without limit, may the river of virtue, undefiled by the 3 spheres, flow into the ocean of the 4 bodies of Buddha. As long as I have not realized this, through all my lifetimes, birth after birth, may not even the words for defilement and suffering be heard, and may I enjoy the prosperity of oceans of happiness and virtue. Having obtained this excellent, free, and well-favored life, along with faith, energy, and intelligence, having attended a worthy master and received the pith of the sacred instructions, may I practice the sacred Dharma properly in all my lives without interruption. The study of scriptures frees one from the veil of ignorance. The contemplation of oral instructions overcomes the darkness of doubt. Light born of meditation illuminates the way things are. May the radiance of the 3 wisdoms increase. The significance of the ground is the 2 truths, free from the extremes of eternalism and nihilism. The excellent path, the 2 accumulations, free from the extremes of assumption and denial. The result obtained is the 2 benefits, free from the extremes of existence and peace. May I meet the Dharma which is free from error. The ground of refinement is mind itself, indivisible luminosity and emptiness. The refining, the great Vajra composure of Mahamudra. What is to be refined? The incidental stains of confusion, the result of refining, the unstained Dharmakaya. May I realize it. Confidence in outlook is cutting assumptions about the ground. The key to meditation is maintaining that without distraction. The supreme activity is to exercise the sense of meditation in everything. May I have confidence in outlook, meditation, and activity. All dharmas are projections of the mind. As for mind, there is no mind. Mind's nature is empty. Empty and immediate, mind appears as everything. Investigating it well, may I settle the basic points. Appearances which never existed in themselves have been confused as objects. Awareness itself, because of ignorance, has been confused as a self. Through the power of dualistic fixation, I wander in the realm of existence. May ignorance and confusion be completely resolved. It doesn't exist. Even Buddhas do not see it. It doesn't not exist. It is the origin of samsara and nirvana. No contradiction, conjunction, the middle way. May I realize the pure being of mind, free of extremes. If one says it is this, nothing has been posited. If one says it is not this, nothing has been denied. Unconditioned, pure being transcends intellect. May I gain conviction in the ultimate position. Not realizing it, one circles in the ocean of samsara. Realizing it, Buddha isn't anywhere else. It is everything, it isn't anything, none of this. Pure being, the basis of everything, may I see any misunderstanding here. Since appearance is mind and emptiness is mind, since realization is mind and delusion is mind, since arising is mind and cessation is mind, may all assumptions about mind be eliminated. Unpolluted by meditation with intellectual efforts, undisturbed by the winds of everyday affairs, not manipulating, knowing how to let what is true be itself. May I become skilled in this practice of mind and maintain it. The waves of subtle and coarse thoughts calm down in their own ground. Motionless, the river of mind abides naturally. Free from the contaminations of dullness and torpor, may I establish the still ocean of shamatha. When one looks again and again at the mind which cannot be looked at, and sees vividly for what it is the meaning of not seeing, doubts about the meaning of is and is not are resolved. Without confusion may my own face know itself. Looking at objects, there is no object, one sees mind. Looking at mind, there is no mind, it is empty of nature. Looking at both of these, dualistic clinging subsides on its own. May I realize sheer clarity, the way mind is. Free from mental constructions, it is called Mahamudra. Free from extremes, it is called Madhyamaka. Everything complete here, it is also called Mahāti. May I attain the confidence that in understanding one, all are realized. The great bliss of non-attachment is continuous. Sheer clarity without fixations is free of obscurations. Passing beyond intellect, non-thought is naturally present. May these experiences continually arise without effort. Attachment to good and fixation on experience subside on their own. Confusion and evil concepts are cleared away in the realm of ultimate nature. In the ordinary mind, there is no rejection or acceptance, no separation or attainment. May I realize the truth of pure being, complete simplicity. While the nature of beings has always been full enlightenment, not realizing this, they wander in endless samsara. For the boundless suffering of sentient beings, may overwhelming compassion be born in my being. While such compassion is active and immediate, in the moment of compassion its essential emptiness is nakedly clear. This conjunction is the undeviating supreme path. Inseparable from it, may I meditate day and night. From the power of meditation come eyes and actual knowledge. Sentient beings are ripened and domains of enlightenment refined. Aspirations for the realization of all aspects of Buddhahood are fulfilled. May I complete these three, fulfillment, ripening, and refinement, and become Buddha. By the compassion of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the 10 directions, and the power of whatever pure virtue there may be, may I wishes and those of all beings be fulfilled as we ask in this way.
Thank you all, and special thanks to Melinda, who is proved adept at rolling with whatever unexpected twists and turns the teachers deal out. Thank you very much, and
Thank you, thank you. Is that your own text?